Hello everyone. Before we begin today's episode, I'd like to remind you that the video version of this podcast is currently on hold until further notice as we work on some exciting changes behind the scenes. The podcast continues in audio format only. You can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so if you enjoy these conversations, I'd really appreciate your support there. Now, let's get into today's episode. Have you ever attended a masterclass expecting answers that are way out of this planet, only to see it at the bottom line that it is all about mastering the basics or following the basic principles? Hello everyone, welcome to the Profession Podcast, a podcast where we talk about mental health, well-being, as well as unlocking the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host Tenyo Jim Owen that is speaking, and today I am going to discuss something that really unlocked the new me that I would like to share with all of you. Of course, it includes lessons that I took from there, and it is regarding my first masterclass experience. It was something that changed the way I look at things these days and the way I look at things about life in general. Now, this first masterclass, I went, of course, expecting some stuff. That was the first thing. The second, the excitement. And of course, something that was way out of the picture for me was meeting the people I know. I met people who I had gone with, in high school, those who I had studied with while at uni. Others were my acquaintances, mind you. Also, getting to know the people who facilitated the masterclass. It's not that I knew them on personal level. Getting to know their experiences, how they've managed businesses and what has kept them standing till today is what I am talking about. Now, the excitement and reality, then also learning how professionals think, quality over quantity, importance of systems, and putting in the work are the issues that I'm going to talk about today. To start off from the list, the first being excitement. Of course, I remember how excited I was and how privileged I was to enter a room where you're going to hear some good information when it comes to businesses and managing, entities. To tell you this, I am not a business proprietor. I am a writer. And thing is, in that masterclass, the excitement was there. That was one. Two, listening to people in business life was also part of my excitement. Also, collecting tips from them was on top of that. To say it in general, I had gone to learn the actual process of managing a business, the risks, how to come out of those risks, and how to compete on the market when it comes to managing a business. And I was excited about all of that because it was part of that learning process. However, something that also took my attention and, of course, took me unexpectedly a little bit was the raw information. In a masterclass, I realized that there is no filter. I say that to support this because I had watched a YouTube short of one of the people I look up to in this life, Vusi Tembekwayo. Now, for some of you who may not know him, he is a public speaker, investor, author, leader. He is in all those capacities. Like, he's a versatile guy. He's one of the business prodigies that is known, here in Africa, by the way, and one of the most paid guys if you're to invite him to speak at your event. He's one of those guys. I saw that clip where he was answering a question that was about a certain lady who says that she teaches people entrepreneurship skills. And so he gives her the answer of, you know what? That is not a business. And she asks why. And this was his answer. You can't scale it. So when she continues to inquire, the guy was like, let me say this. It is because once people figure out how you give people those skills, they're going to go out there and do it themselves. So, the rawness of information was the key thing here that took me away. Before I also dive into any other factor here, at The masterclass, expect anybody there. Expect anyone who has paid their money and has come to learn. I saw very many people, and the first lesson I learned was that as a country, there is a lot of unemployment amongst the young people. A lot of unemployment. Very many people have, precious degrees that when they went to study them, while at uni or when they undertook them, they were expecting that when I get out here, I will get a job, get a huge sum of money that will, enable me get whatever thing I really like. The answer is now. I saw a very, very huge group of people or population of very many unemployed young people. And among the categories of other people I saw were, of course, the business proprietors, the employed. Then also in the room, there were people who were in debt, with banks. All those people were also there. Then the expectations and reality. Expectations versus reality. To be honest, I expected something magical. I expected answers that were out of this world, where someone talks something and you're like, wow, I have never heard of it. That was not there. I thought that after finishing this masterclass, it ran for a full week. I thought that after finishing it, the masterclass, I would, become much better. Mind you, to take you into detail, this was like the first day. So I expected that after the first day, I would become much better. No, that didn't happen. It didn't happen overnight, and it did not ignite the too much fire I had expected. Thing is, I imagined I would discover hidden secrets that nobody else knew. And what surprised me was this, that there aren't many secrets at all. Instead, the facilitators slash instructors kept emphasizing basic principles in life or around, businesses. And as I've said majorly, in life, the consistency, focus on fundamentals, the patience, improvement, all that, then also taking the criticism. It was all part of what they were talking about in a nutshell. Over time, I realized that it's not until you realize what experts never stop doing. That was one lesson I learned, that experts never stop doing basic things that they have learned over time, and they keep repeating them over and over. Another component, learning how professionals think. Very many of us have read financial books. Personally, I'm reading a book titled 50 Secrets of Success, by a very good CEO called Rajiv Gupta. And others I know, they have read about, the science of money, then the rules of money. Others have read books from, award winning CEOs when it comes to leadership, investment, right? However, learning how those guys think is one thing, and it was how the facilitators presented the information. It showed me that them as professionals who have been in the business world think differently. One of the facilitators is in finance. He is a very, very knowledgeable guy. He has worked with, is it PTA Bank? That is actually based in Kenya. I don't know whether it still exists. But the thing is, his financial knowledge blew me away. It made me discover that when you are in the game for so many years, you know how things run. And so the way he thought, the way he articulated information, his soliloquy was really one of the best things I have ever had. So the way he delivered information showed me this, that professionals slash experts think differently and solve problems differently. If you're any business proprietor, maybe you own an SME, small and medium enterprise, and then you also have a very huge enterprise. It can be a supermarket, a law firm, it can be any kind of business where you are actually getting an income. He kind of put it down like this. He was like, very many people give up when they fail from the word go. And as beginners in business, this is what they often ask themselves: what should I do? Right? That Maybe you've taken a loan or you did not even do the market research properly and the customers are no longer buying your commodities or anything. You're like, what should I do? Experts ask this. Why did this happen? Right? That shift in thinking has stayed with me till today. Asking yourself why it happened and going to the root and uprooting it, or understanding why it happened, you go back to the drawing board and you start navigating it, is the game changer. I learned that learning is not also only about gaining information, it is about changing how we all approach problems. That was also one of the biggest things that I lacked as a person, looking at a problem and you're like, how should I approach this? And I know very many people really do lack this element, in their mentality and personality. A problem comes and people just chicken out by running away from it. Quality over quantity. This was one of the biggest lessons I actually learned, and I realized that very many of us, we are surrounded by so much information, and how we process it is a game changer. Most of us, we can tend to watch tutorials on how we are supposed to do certain things and, all that. However, information is not the same as education. That is something I want to just put across as a person, because it is what I took away. A good teacher teaches by removing confusion. A teacher teaches by removing confusion and making people organize their knowledge on how they process things and how they see things in life. That is how my mindset changed towards, business owners and towards what it takes to own a business. It was incredibly valuable. Then, one of the other lessons or aspects that hit me very hard, guys, it is importance of systems. Currently, I am reading a book titled Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he also talks about systems. That has stayed with me till today. James Clear says it like this: true thinking is goalless thinking. Systems versus goals. Now, let me just say this like this: a system processes results, goals show you what you want to achieve. That is the smallest definition. And I've realized that all of us, be it in business and in life, we all have goals, right? Winners and losers all have goals. Now, let me just put it in a career way. If very many people are applying for one job, a job where, let's say, 3 people are needed, the HR team of organization X, Y, and Z will get so many applications from both winners and losers. And the people they call for that interview are the ones who have made it to the HR's desk. So the rest of you, even if you had the same goal, you are not called. The system is like this: the kinds of aspects that you put that are going to help you reach your goal. That is the system. And I realized this so much in how I am also gaining a new skill when it comes to language learning. Very many language learners can bear me witness on this. The importance of systems in how you want to reach a certain level of fluency when you speak that language is the game changer. And I realized that even in business, systems are the game changer. The kinds of campaigns that you put up as an entrepreneur, if you want to enter the market so well, and you get so much love from the customers and such that they kind of buy your commodities, and how you compete amongst other entrepreneurs is a game changer. It is just from a system. And it is where I learned not to be intimidated by the likes of people who have made it in the business world. Let us say the kinds of Elon, or the kinds of companies like Apple, Samsung, how they have made it in the business world and how they are still competing and getting so much love from us, the customers. It is just one game changer. Systems, and them being committed to those systems. The problem we have with us as humans is that we are never committed to the systems when they are put in place. That is why some people have this kind of changing in systems when they reach the goal, or when they cross the finish line, they're like, it's all done. No, a system goes on to improve you and you start learning some other things about yourself that you may not know, be it in business, in your work life, in everything that you do. And so, systems, guys, are the game changer. That is why I've taken so much time to learn how systems work. I repeat this: true thinking is goalless thinking. I'm not saying that goals are useless. No. Let's all focus on the systems in order to reach the goals. Another thing, that putting in the work is one of the other factors. That much as we have read so much books or so many books about money, leadership, investment, entrepreneurship, if we get all those methods from the books and we do not execute them, let's forget that. This is what the masterclass taught me. Let's forget the fact that yes, we have read the books. If we do not execute what's in those books, we are still at zero. So it is practice that shows the results, and it is the results that you bring out that show what you have been doing behind the scenes. So if you put in the work to, let us say, ensure that your business, survives, one of the best crises I can give as an example is COVID. I got to know from that masterclass that the central bank had to tell all banks here in Uganda to restructure loans when it came to COVID, because very many people had got loans. Business proprietors, they had got loans from banks, and as usual, a bank has to see the performance of the loan. So the bank tells them restructure loans. And when COVID went away, some people failed to pay loans, and yeah, their assets went. I got to see how very many people who were in the business world, political arena, have lost their assets. And to some of you who still know Sebagal and Sons, how they left. I also got to discover how big entities like Nakumatt, Tuskys, Uchumi, ShopRite have exited this country and where their owners are currently. It was kind of, absurd, and also some kind of new information I discovered. So looking back, I remember that very many people who were in the room, biggest percentage, they were really unemployed young Ugandans. This is a message I'm just giving out to people who are coming out of uni, that guys, if you have any skill on you and you have never put it to use, do it anyway. Like out here, it is a jungle, and if you start a business, it is willing to take risks, because when the going gets tough, it's only the tough that get going. My final thoughts on that were masterclass blew me away, and the lessons I took, the kinds of lessons I learned, were really a game changer for me. And also understanding that business is not all about going in there and you start playing games, right? People are not playing games when it comes to businesses. I also got to understand, partnerships, right? Very many of us who are business owners or business proprietors, we have partnerships we make. Bringing on a partner in a business, I learned its risks, and also I learned its importance. So it's all about the kinds of partners that you bring in the business that will make the business survive or fail. So those were kind of like the lessons I took out of that 1 week masterclass. And also looking at life differently, looking at career life differently, knowing that there's gonna be, trials and errors. And one thing I was thankful for, those people have enabled me, solve so many things of trial and error. Hearing a person who has ever been in trenches, in their business life, and them sharing their stories openly in a masterclass can save you very many years of trial and error. I got to discover that very many people were in debt and did not know even how to cover that debt. The loan has to perform, the bank keeps calling you, and for them, they really want their money because they're also in business. They're supposed to be in business. I got to discover that taking a loan has its risks. I got to tell myself that, you know what, know about good loans and bad loans, know about a good debt and a bad debt, and why interest goes high and low. And this is my message to everyone, that guys, let us all borrow money for clarity. Let us not borrow money from banks or regulated loan sharks and we just divert the money because people are going to figure you out. And we should have proper sources of income. When we are going to borrow loans, some of us, lie a lot. When you're borrowing money from a bank, the bank has a track record of you. And if you haven't been paying the loan on time, trust me, they will hike the percentage rate when it comes to interest because they are seeing a risk ahead. Alright, guys, that is today's episode. And if you have enjoyed this episode, do not forget to follow the Profession Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, plus the YouTube channel, so that you never miss any new episode that comes out. Thank you so much for listening, dear listeners, and hanging out with me or taking off your time to listen to such nice lessons I learned from this 1 week masterclass as an individual. Otherwise, take care, keep learning, keep chasing your dreams, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.